I still remember the first time I heard the scream. It was a cold October night, the kind where the air bites at your skin and the forest breathes frost. My family had just moved into a small cabin on the edge of Elmsworth Woods, a dense and ancient forest whispered about by locals. They warned us, old tales mostly, of people going missing, of unnatural cries echoing through the trees, and of shadows that moved when no one watched. We laughed. City people like us didn't scare easily. At least, not then. The cabin was quaint, rustic, and surrounded by towering trees that seemed to lean in, as though listening. My parents were thrilled with the peace and isolation. Me? I was 16, bored, and itching for cell service. That first night, while my parents were asleep, I stepped outside. The sky was clouded, but the moon peeked through enough to paint the woods in silver. I stood on the porch, wrapped in a hoodie, listening. It was too quiet. Not peaceful, silent. No crickets, no wind, not even the rustling of leaves. Just stillness. And then it came. A scream. Far off at first, high-pitched, unnatural. It sliced through the silence like a knife. I froze. Another scream, closer this time. A shriek, almost inhuman. But layered in it was something familiar, like someone calling for help. Desperate, terrified. I backed into the house and locked the door, heart pounding. I wanted to wake my parents, but something, some instinct, told me not to. Not yet. The next morning, I asked the old man at the general store in town about the woods. His face darkened. "You heard it, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. He leaned in, whispering, "That's not a cry you answer. People who go into those woods after dark don't come back. It mimics voices, cries for help, but it's not human." I left without buying anything. That night I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on and stared at the trees from my bedroom window. Nothing moved. Until just past midnight when I saw her. A girl, maybe 10 years old, standing just inside the tree line. Barefoot, in a white dress, dirty and torn. She looked up straight at my window and screamed. The same scream I had heard the night before. And then, she vanished. I didn't tell my parents about the girl. What would I even say? "Hey, Mom, there's a ghost child screaming outside my window?" They would have laughed or worse, thought I was making it up. But I knew what I saw. Her face was pale, her hair matted with leaves. And her eyes, they didn't look like a child's. They were hollow, black, empty. The next morning I searched the edge of the woods. No footprints, no signs anyone had been there. The leaves lay undisturbed, like she had floated above them. I began researching the area. Elmsworth had a long history, settled in the early 1800s, mostly forgotten over time. But I dug deeper and found old newspaper clippings in the library archives. The most chilling was from 1992. Girl missing after entering Elmsworth Woods. The photo was grainy, but I recognized the face. It was her, the girl in the white dress. Her name was Hannah Mae Winslow. She vanished at age 10. The search lasted weeks. They found her shoe, blood on a tree trunk, but never her body. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept the curtains shut, lights off, but at 2:17 a.m., I heard it again. The scream. But this time, it didn't come from the woods. It came from inside the house. I jumped from my bed and rushed into the hallway. My parents' door was closed, but the scream had clearly come from downstairs. I grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the living room. The old wooden boards creaked under my feet like they were warning me not to go any further. I scanned the room. Empty. Then I saw it. A trail of muddy footprints. Small, barefoot prints, leading from the back door to the middle of the living room, and then nowhere. They just stopped. I followed them with shaking hands, stopping where they ended. The air was colder here. Not just chilly, frigid, like the dead of winter had swept through a single patch of air. I heard a whisper, faint, like it was spoken through clenched teeth. "Help me?" I turned around. Nothing. The flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, I felt something behind me. Breathing, slow, raspy, right against my neck. I ran. I didn't look back. I locked myself in my room and sat with my back to the door until the sun came up. When I finally opened the door the next morning, there was something scratched into the wood on the outside. 4 words, written in jagged, childlike letters. She won't let me. I stared at the message on my door until my legs went numb. She won't let me. Who was she? And what wouldn't she let the girl do? Leave? Be saved? Rest? I didn't tell my parents. They had started to notice I wasn't sleeping, but I blamed it on the move in school. It was easier than explaining the truth, that something was screaming in the woods, walking through our house and leaving ghostly messages behind. That day I skipped school and biked into town. I needed answers. The librarian was an older woman with thick glasses and a sharper memory. I asked her about Hannah Winslow. Her eyes narrowed. "You're not the first to ask about that girl," she said, "but no one's found the truth. Some say she was taken. Others believe she was lured." "By who?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Not who. What?" There was a pause before she leaned closer. "They call it the Watcher in the Pines. It's been in those woods for generations, feeding on fear. I've seen maps of this area dating back to the 1800s. Always the same stories. People hear cries, screams, then vanish. And those who return, they come back wrong." I asked if anyone had survived an encounter. She nodded slowly. "One, Marcus Dillard. He went missing in '78, came back a week later. Never spoke a word again. Spent the rest of his life in Hollow Hill Sanitarium." That name stuck with me. That night I searched online and found an article. Marcus Dillard dies at 71, the last survivor of Elmsworth. Attached was an image of him in his final years. His eyes looked empty, terrified, like he'd seen hell and never returned. That night I tried to stay awake again, but sometime after midnight I must have dozed off. I woke to the sound of footsteps, slow, barefoot, just outside my room. Then, scratching. I held my breath, heart racing. The doorknob began to turn. I jumped up and yanked the door open. No one there. But down the hallway, just at the stairs, stood Hannah. Only now her dress was darker, stained. Her eyes were wet, not from tears, but from something thick and black that leaked down her cheeks like ink. She raised her hand slowly and pointed. Not at me, but behind me. I turned. A woman stood at my window. Tall, draped in shadows, her face completely covered in long, tangled hair. Her fingers scraped along the glass, nails clicking like claws. Then Hannah whispered, "That's her." I stumbled back, heart racing, breath caught in my throat. The woman's face, if she had one, remained hidden beneath thick, dripping strands of hair. Her body didn't move, just stood there, watching or listening, or both. And then slowly she raised her hand and tapped the window. Once, twice, 3 times. Each tap felt like it echoed inside my skull. I blinked, and she was gone. I turned toward the hallway. Hannah had vanished too. I barely slept that night. In the morning I checked the window for prints. Nothing. But on the glass, faint and written in condensation, were the same words from my door. She won't let me. I needed help, real help. By noon I was standing in front of a faded sign that read, "Hollow Hill Sanitarium closed." The place was abandoned years ago, but I'd found an old blog from a paranormal investigator who'd once interviewed Marcus Dillard there. I climbed through a broken window and wandered the dark halls, flashlight trembling in my hand. The walls were covered in peeling paint and scratched names. The silence was suffocating. Until I found it, room 104. The door was slightly open. Inside was a bed, rusted and empty, but on the far wall were pages, dozens of them, taped, pinned, and even nailed to the surface, all drawn in the same hand. Stick figures, Tall trees, a small house, and always a shadow with long hair and claws. One page caught my eye. It was a rough drawing of a girl, Hannah, standing in the woods surrounded by black marks. Above her were the words, "She found me. She won't let me leave." Below it, scratched deep into the wooden wall, was something else. "Do not follow the scream." I left in a panic, stumbling out the same window. As I caught my breath, I realized I had brought one of the pages with me. I didn't remember grabbing it, but there it was in my jacket pocket. That night I kept it by my bed. At 2:17 a.m., the scream came again. But this time it was different. It came from inside my room. The lights flickered. The shadows stretched along the walls unnaturally. And when I looked to the corner, there she was. The woman, her hair dripping as if she'd just crawled out of the earth. Her mouth wide open, but no sound escaped. Only darkness. A silence that screamed louder than anything I'd ever heard. She reached for me. I couldn't move. Then from the hallway, I heard Hannah's voice. "Run." I didn't think, I just obeyed. I bolted from the bed, dodging her outstretched arm, and sprinted into the hallway. The air was thick, like trying to run underwater. My legs felt like they were sinking into the floor, the shadows tugging at my feet. Behind me, I heard a shrill hiss, more animal than human, followed by the sound of nails dragging across the walls. I reached my parents' door and pounded on it. No answer. "Mom! Dad!" I screamed, turning the knob. Locked. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. Silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. The same sound. But now it was coming from inside their room. I backed away and saw her again, Hannah, standing at the bottom of the stairs, bathed in moonlight seeping through the window. Her dress now soaked in black, her skin almost translucent. She looked more shadow than girl, but her eyes, those haunting, empty eyes, still searched for something. She raised her hand and motioned for me to follow. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to hide, to disappear, to pretend none of this was real. But something deep in my chest told me, if I didn't follow her now, I'd never wake up again. I followed. Down the stairs, through the living room, into the cold, dark woods. The trees groaned above us, and the wind carried whispers I couldn't understand. The further we walked, the more twisted the forest became. The ground grew soft, almost pulsing beneath my feet like a living thing. I tried to ask Hannah where we were going, but she only looked back once and said, "She lives in the hollow." I didn't understand until we reached it. A clearing, perfectly circular, where no trees grew. The center was sunken, forming a shallow pit lined with stone. It looked ancient. Wrong. At the edge was an old wooden well, rotting, cracked, covered in handprints, tiny ones. Children's. Hannah walked to the edge and looked down. I followed. Darkness. Endless. Then, movement. Something deep below shifted, and I heard it again. The scream. This time it came from the well itself, and with it a voice, familiar, female. "Help me, please!" It sounded like my mother. I turned to Hannah in horror. She shook her head slowly. "It's not her," she whispered. "It wants you to believe it is." Then the wind picked up, and from the trees behind us, the woman came crawling. Not walking, crawling, like her bones bent the wrong way. And she was smiling. She moved like a broken spider, limbs disjointed, jerking forward in unnatural bursts. Her fingers sank into the dirt as she dragged herself from tree to tree, faster than she should have been able to. The closer she got, the louder the voices became. "Help me! Come closer!" Just a little further. They weren't coming from the woman anymore. They were coming from the well. I took a step back, clutching the edge of the stones. Hannah stood beside me, still and unblinking, her expression blank, but her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of what was coming, but fear for me. She's feeding, Hannah whispered. She feeds on what you fear most, what you love most. I looked down again. The well was deeper than before. Now I saw a shape climbing, something with long, pale arms and no face. Its mouth stretched wider and wider as it ascended, dragging itself toward the surface. The whispers became screams, hundreds of them. Men, women, children, all overlapping in a cacophony of agony. The creature burst from the well. It wasn't the woman. It was something worse. Faceless, skin like wet paper. Its limbs stretched unnaturally long, and where its eyes should be were two gaping holes that bled shadow. It reached for me, and suddenly Hannah stepped between us. "No!" she shouted, voice strong, commanding. "He's not yours!" The thing recoiled, screeching in frustration. The trees groaned. The ground cracked beneath our feet. I grabbed Hannah's arm, but she didn't move. She turned to me with tears in her empty eyes. "She won't stop," she said. "Not until you give her what she wants." "What does she want?" I gasped. "You." The word hung in the air like poison. "She chose you the moment you heard the scream," Hannah continued. "She marks her prey with fear, then waits. She waits until you come to her willingly. That's how she feeds. That's how she survives." The creature clawed at the stones, trying to pull itself up again. "I can stop her," Hannah said, "but only for now. You have to run." "I'm not leaving you," I said. Hannah's eyes softened. "You already did." And with that, she stepped backward, into the well. The creature shrieked, its body twisting in fury. It grabbed her, but Hannah held onto the edge just long enough to look up at me. "Don't follow the scream," she said. Then she was gone. The well collapsed in on itself, the ground sealing with a thunderous roar. The trees groaned once more, and then silence. Heavy, absolute silence. I was alone. The woods were dark again. But I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. I wandered through the woods for hours, maybe longer. Time didn't feel real anymore. The trees all looked the same, tall and endless, each one whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. My phone had died. My flashlight flickered until it gave out completely. The moon was gone behind clouds. And the silence wasn't comforting. It was waiting. When I finally stumbled back onto the road near my house, the sun was just beginning to rise. I didn't feel relief. I felt dread. Like I had brought something back with me. Like I had become something else. My house was quiet when I stepped inside. Too quiet. I called out to my parents. Nothing. I opened their bedroom door. Empty. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. In the bathroom mirror, I saw it. A thin black mark curling just beneath my left ear, almost like a burn. When I touched it, it stung. A strange whisper echoed in my skull. "She knows you now." I scrubbed at it until my skin turned raw, but it wouldn't fade. It pulsed with heat. Later that day, I searched everything I could online. Urban legends, ghost stories, missing persons. I found fragments, a pattern. Different places, different names, but always the same core. Someone hears a scream in the woods, then disappears. Sometimes they come back, but they're never really themselves again. They're marked, like me. I found something buried deep on an old forum. A user named HD had posted nearly a decade ago. "She's older than the forest. She doesn't hunt. She waits. You go to her. That's the trick. You always go to her, one way or another. Don't listen to the scream. It's not pain. It's bait." I refreshed the page. The post was gone. That night I dreamed of Hannah. She was standing at the edge of the woods, her hands stained with shadow, her eyes hollow. "She's in you now," she whispered. "She's using you to call others." I woke up gasping, sweat soaking my sheets. And in the distance, beyond my bedroom window, I heard it. The scream. But it wasn't just one this time. It was three. I didn't leave the house the next day. I couldn't. Every time I got near the door, my ears would ring, and the scream would echo faintly, like it was just outside waiting. I kept the curtains closed, phone off, lights dim, but still, I felt watched. That evening, I heard footsteps on the porch. I froze. No knock, just slow, deliberate pacing across the wooden boards. I peeked through the blinds. Three people stood at the edge of my yard. A boy, maybe 10, a girl in a white coat, barefoot, and a man in a hoodie, face obscured. They weren't doing anything, just staring at the house. At me. I shut the blinds. When I looked again, they were gone. I started seeing them everywhere after that. Reflections in windows, across the street, at the edge of the trees. Always three, always silent. I even caught one in the corner of a photo I took of my backyard, standing by the tree line, arms dangling too long at their sides. And the worst part? They looked familiar. The girl in the coat, I saw her on a missing persons flyer from last year. The boy, I remembered his face from a news report about a camper who vanished 2 towns over. The man, I wasn't sure, but his stance, it felt like me. I was becoming one of them, marked, claimed. At night, they moved closer. I'd see them at the windows. Once I heard the front door rattle, but it was locked. I never let them in. Until I made a mistake. I answered the phone. I don't even know why. It was late, well past midnight, and my phone had no signal for days. But it rang. Just once. When I picked up, no one spoke. Just breathing. Then a whisper. Let us in. I threw the phone across the room. But the line stayed open. Whispers poured through it. Overlapping voices. Crying, screaming, pleading. And beneath it all, her. You brought them to me, she said. Now bring me more. I unplugged the phone, battery removed, SIM card snapped. But I still heard her. In the vents, the drains, the walls. She was everywhere, feeding. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the front door to my bedroom. I live alone. I started boarding up the windows. Not because I thought it would keep her out, but to stop me from looking outside. I knew the moment I did, I'd see them again. And every time I did, something inside me shifted, warped, like a thread being tugged loose. I stopped sleeping. Because in my dreams, I was in the woods again. But now, I was her. I saw through her eyes, felt her hunger, her aching need. The screams weren't just echoes, they were fuel. The more fear, the louder they became. And the louder they became, the stronger she got. That's when I realized something terrifying. The scream doesn't lure you in. It pulls you apart. It tears down the walls in your mind, memory by memory, until you forget who you are, until you want to go to her, until you scream for her too. I tried to call someone, a friend, a cousin, anyone, but no one answered. And when someone did, it wasn't their voice I heard. It was hers. You can't keep me out, she said, soft and sweet. I'm already inside. That night, I checked the woods again. I don't know why. Maybe part of me hoped it was gone, that this was a dream. But when I looked, I saw something I didn't expect. More people. They weren't like the others. These were alive. Teenagers with flashlights, laughing as they crept toward the tree line. Probably dared each other to go in. They didn't hear the scream. Not yet. But they would. I ran outside, barefoot and shouting. I don't remember what I screamed, only that it wasn't words. Just terror, desperation. The kids turned and bolted, startled by me, probably thinking I was insane. And maybe I was. But before they ran, I saw one of them stop, just for a second. A girl with black hair and headphones. And in the distance, from the trees, she heard it. Her eyes went wide. Her flashlight dropped. Then she smiled. Not her smile, hers. I stood there helpless as the girl took a slow step toward the woods and vanished into the dark. I didn't hear her scream. Not yet. But I would. The girl's name was Lydia. I found her missing poster stapled to a telephone pole 2 days later. Same black hair, same pale skin. The other kids she was with had reported her missing, said she wandered into the woods and never came back. They said they heard a scream, but it was far away, like it wasn't even part of this world. I knew better. Lydia hadn't vanished. She had joined her, and the scream would only grow louder now. I stopped going outside. The house became my cell. Every night I'd hear more voices, more footsteps. The others were closer than ever. Sometimes I'd wake up and see them just outside my bedroom door, watching, never entering, but always closer. The mark on my neck had spread. Now it wrapped down my collarbone, black veins like cracks in glass. And my reflection didn't always move when I did. Sometimes it watched. I started hearing things from inside the walls. Scratching, clawing, a child's laughter, a woman humming a lullaby in reverse. The shadows in the corners of my room grew longer, even with no light. One night I reached for the lamp and felt someone else's hand on mine. That was when I decided to end it. I packed a bag, not with supplies, just the essentials. A flashlight, a journal, a knife I barely knew how to use. I didn't plan to survive. I planned to finish it. I was going back to the woods. Maybe if I found where it began, maybe if I gave myself to her, I could stop it from spreading, from claiming more. I left the house just after midnight. The streets were empty, but the wind carried voices. Not real ones, just echoes, warnings, pleas, names of people long gone. The forest loomed ahead like a mouth, open and waiting. And still, I stepped in. This time, the scream came quickly. It wasn't distant. It was right behind me. I turned, flashlight shaking in my grip, but nothing was there. Still, the air buzzed with energy. Thick, electric. The trees groaned as if they were alive, pulsing with breath. Then I saw the trail again. The same one I'd followed that first night. Only now it looked different. Older, hungrier, as if it had been waiting for me all along. I followed it, the black vines under my skin thrumming with heat. Every step made me feel less me. My name, my face, faded at the edges of my memory. That's when I saw it, the clearing, where she lives. It wasn't made of trees. It was made of bones. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, stitched into the shape of a nest. And in the center, her. She had no face. Just a hollow space where light bent wrong, where screams echoed out like wind from a cave. Her arms were too long, her fingers ending in roots that writhed into the soil. And she smiled, without lips, without a mouth. Just knowing. You came back, she said inside my mind, just like all the others. I raised the knife, but my hand didn't move. She laughed, low and soft, and the woods joined her, not with joy, with hunger. I could feel her inside my skull, fingers scraping, searching, prying memories apart. Every fear I tried to bury surged up like a wave crashing against rotten boards. I wanted to scream, but my throat was locked tight. She had control now. The knife slipped from my hand, falling useless to the forest floor. She moved toward me, dragging herself across the bone-ridden ground in a slithering, impossible motion. Her faceless head tilted as if she were studying me. You were brave to come here. The whisper wasn't gentle. It was acid in my ears. But bravery doesn't save you. Behind her, I noticed something. The bones. They weren't just human. There were animals, twisted shapes. Something that looked like a child's doll fused to a skull. All offerings, all reminders of what had been lured in before me. I closed my eyes, trying to focus. That's when I heard it, a different voice. Hear me? It echoed faintly, beneath the trees like a memory cracking through static. Hear me, Hannah. I forced my eyes open. She stood at the edge of the clearing, hands clenched, her form flickering in and out like broken film. Her face was calmer now. She looked less drained, stronger, and angry. The woman turned toward her and hissed, a sound that rattled every bone in my body. Hannah didn't flinch. "We're done feeding you," she whispered. I didn't understand until I felt movement at my feet. Shadows, more than before. Dozens, maybe hundreds, crawling from beneath the leaves. They looked like children, some barely formed. The others, each of them standing at the edge, no longer silent. And they were staring at her. The woman's form twisted wildly, claws scratching at the ground, trying to anchor herself. The air pulsed. She was losing her grip. Hannah stepped forward. "It ends with him." The woman let out a scream so sharp it split the sky in two. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head as the world blurred. Suddenly, the scream stopped. I opened my eyes to see the woman melting back into the earth, her faceless void collapsing into itself, dragged down by the shadows, by all those she had taken. The last thing I heard from her was a whisper, "You will scream again." And then, silence. I woke up lying in the clearing. The bones were gone. The trees stood still for the first time in weeks. No whispers, no shadows, just the distant hum of wind brushing through the leaves. In the silence, it wasn't empty. It was clean. Hannah was gone too. I searched the edge of the forest for her, calling her name until my voice gave out. But I knew she had stayed behind. Whatever she had done, whatever strength she'd found, she used it to end the cycle, to free the others, to free me. I stumbled back toward the road, barefoot and weak, the vines beneath my skin shriveled and black. By the time I reached the edge of the woods, the sun was rising, and for the first time I didn't feel watched. I thought it was over. But when I got home, things weren't the same. I tried telling people what happened. No one believed me. The kids who'd been there that night, those who survived, they remembered running. But not Lydia. Not the scream. Not me. It was like I had been erased from the story. I checked the police reports, the missing posters. There were none. Lydia never existed. Neither did Hannah. And then one night I heard something outside. A knock. Not at the door, but at the back window. I froze. No wind, no footsteps. Just 3 knocks, soft and slow. I looked, even though I shouldn't have. At the edge of the trees, a girl stood there. Black hair, pale skin, smiling. Lydia. I blinked, and she was gone. But the window remained cold for hours. I moved towns after that, changed my name, burned everything from before. But sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear a soft whisper behind the walls. "You will scream again." And I wonder, did we end her? Or did we become her? Because the woods are quiet now, but they're waiting.